Standing in front of me are my husband Bert and mother-in-law Violet, both with smug grins plastered on their faces. What are they plotting this time? I let out a sigh in my mind. You're no longer needed here. Pack your stuff and get out of this house, Bert declares with a loud laugh. That's right. Someone as useless as you should just leave already, Violet chimes in, thrusting a completed divorce petition in my face. Without showing any emotion, I glance at the paper Violet is holding out. Are you serious about this divorce petition? Of course I am. You know I'm not the type to joke about something like this, don't you? You should just divorce Bert already. After that, the new wife will take over. Hearing Violet's words, I take the divorce papers from her outstretched hand. As I took the divorce papers while keeping my head lowered, Bert and Violet, assuming I was in shock from being told about the divorce, burst into loud laughter. But as I looked at the two of them, I smiled. My name is Rebecca. I married Bert when I was 25 years old. He is a year older than me. Even though we're just 1 year apart, he started acting like he was superior to me, barking orders as if he were above me. He wasn't like this in the beginning. When we first got married, we decided to save money before having kids. So I focused on my work, and once we had saved enough, we started trying for a baby. Then our long-awaited daughter, Lily, was born. It happened when I was 30. I still vividly remember the indescribable feeling of holding my child for the first time. Our daughter was the most precious thing in the world to me. Bert even cried after the birth, saying, "Rebecca, thank you for bringing such a beautiful angel into our lives. Let's treasure her and raise her together." True to his words, Bert took paternity leave and was actively involved in taking care of Lily. But that only lasted until she was almost 1 year old. Hey, make her stop crying. She's so loud. Lily was not even a year old yet. No child that age listens to adults barking orders at them. Hey, you don't have to yell so much. Lily is still too young to be quiet, and yelling like that only makes things worse. As expected, hearing Bert shouting didn't stop Lily from crying. Instead, she cried even harder. That's not my problem. It's your bad parenting. It's no wonder she never stops crying with someone like you raising her. With that, Bert stormed off to his room, slamming the door behind him. I sighed as I watched his retreating back. Where did the words he said when Lily was born go? Why won't he share in the parenting? Why do I have to take all the blame? I thought as I held Lily close, trying to soothe her. When Bert's attitude began to grow colder, the thought of divorce crossed my mind. But Lily was still just a baby, and I didn't want to raise her without a father. So I pushed the thought away. To Bert's credit, he always provided for us financially, so money was never an issue. But as difficult as he could be, his parents, Violet and Georgie, were even more challenging. From the very first meeting before our wedding, Violet made it clear she didn't approve of me. She had no problem saying things like, "Why would Bert choose a woman like you?" Bert defended me at the time, but the insults continued until the meeting ended. Georgie, Bert's father, had a very traditional mindset, firmly believing that men were superior to women. "You're still working, aren't you? Quit right away. Men earn the money, and women belong in the home. That's the rule," he said. But I had no intention of quitting my job. "I'm sorry, but Bert and I have agreed to continue working together after marriage. We also plan to share household responsibilities." "What? Absolutely not," Georgie shouted. "Dad, listen. The truth is, on just my income, we can get by, but we can't save. If Rebecca works, we'll have more flexibility. Of course, I'll help with the housework, too, Bert explained. Thanks to Bert's intervention, Georgie grudgingly accepted the idea of us both working. Of course, his approval wasn't really necessary since he didn't live with us. When I became pregnant and we found out the baby's gender, we informed Bert's parents, but their reaction was far from pleasant. What is this? The first child is supposed to be a boy, and it's a girl. A wife's duty is to produce heirs. This child is useless. Hurry up and have a boy. Mom, how can you say that? The baby Rebecca is carrying is my child, and I love her already. Your mother is right. You're our only son. Producing an heir is your responsibility. We don't need a girl, Dad. This kind of behavior led us to keep our distance from Bert's parents. When Lily was born, we informed them since she was their granddaughter, but they didn't offer any words of congratulations or support. Based on how they acted during my pregnancy, I decided not to take Lily to their house after she was born. We invited them to events, but they never attended. In total, they might have seen Lily twice, if that. Bert apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry about my parents, but he hadn't done anything wrong." Every time there was an issue with my in-laws, he would apologize with a guilty look, which only made me feel even more burdened with guilt. Of course, my own parents congratulated us and offered kind words. They also supported me with child care, for which I was genuinely grateful. A few years passed, and our daughter turned 10. During that time, Bert barely participated in raising our child, leaving all the housework and child care entirely to me. When our daughter turned 1, my maternity leave ended, and I had to return to work. This meant juggling my job on top of managing the housework and caring for our child. In that state, the mental and physical burden became overwhelming, and I was completely exhausted every single day. One day, I received a call from Violet on my mobile phone. I hesitated to answer, expecting another round of criticism. "Hello. It's been a while. Is something the matter? You took too long to answer. When I call, you answer immediately. That's why you're so useless. I'm sorry. I was in the middle of housework and couldn't get to the phone right away." Whatever. Rebecca, can you come to a hospital right now? I'm off work today, so I can, but did something happen? I'll explain when you get here. Hurry up and come over. I'll be waiting. With that, she abruptly hung up. I figured I didn't have a choice in the matter, so I started getting ready to leave. The hospital was a 40-minute drive away. For those 40 minutes, I drove with a heavy heart, feeling increasingly anxious. When I arrived at the hospital, I checked my phone and saw an email indicating room 2055, so I headed there. As I opened the door, Violet greeted me with an annoyed expression. "You're late. What have you been doing?" "Honestly, I'm sorry. I got ready as quickly as I could, but it takes 40 minutes to drive here, so I couldn't have come any faster." Useless wife. With a sigh, Violet turned and opened a curtain to the room. Inside, Georgie was lying in bed, while Bert sat in a chair nearby. "Bert, why are you here?" "Mom called me. She said it was something important." Violet gestured for me to sit, so I took the chair next to Bert. "So, Violet, what is it you want to talk about?" "I'll get straight to the point. You two are moving in with us starting today." Her words left me speechless. Violet despises me, that much is clear. So why on earth is she suggesting we live together? I was bewildered. I glanced at Bert, who looked equally surprised, as if this was the first time he'd heard about it too. "You're saying we're going to live together? You've never mentioned this before. Why now? Can't you see the situation? Georgie fell down the stairs yesterday and hit his head. He's bedridden now." "Bedridden? It's not as bad as it sounds. With assistance, he can manage daily activities. So the reason for living together is to take care of him together. Exactly, Bert. You're quick to catch on, and I appreciate that. I was dumbfounded by the conversation unfolding in front of me. Georgie is someone who firmly believes that men work and women handle the home. That means if we move in to help, the caregiving responsibilities will inevitably fall to me. There's no way I want that. The thought of living with Violet, who insults me every time we meet, filled me with dread. Not to mention the added bonus of her constant harassment. Wait a minute. Both Bert and I have jobs. Taking care of Georgie isn't something we can manage. How dare you? Don't you feel any pity for Dad? Exactly. You're heartless. Of course I feel sorry for him. But let's be realistic. Managing work, housework, childcare, and caregiving all at once is impossible. Don't be ridiculous. If we all cooperate, we can handle it. Right now, the priority is ensuring Dad's safety and comfort. Cooperate? You say that now, but you always stop helping eventually. That's what happened with raising Lily. So forgive me if I don't believe you this time. Shut up, don't lecture me. The decision is final. We're moving in, and since the house is under my name, I'm canceling the lease at the end of the month. Bert's and my in-laws' selfish demands filled me with anger, but my objections were ultimately ignored. When we got home, I explained everything to my daughter. I see, I don't want to move. Grandparents are always so mean to Mom and me, she said. I know, sweetie, but your dad has already made the decision. Hearing that, she reluctantly agreed. I felt a wave of guilt toward my daughter and an overwhelming sense of dread about starting this life with my in-laws. But there was no turning back, so I steeled myself and moved all our belongings into their house, officially beginning our cohabitation. Georgie was essentially bedridden for life, requiring constant care, and I ended up quitting my job, or rather, I was forced to quit. Looking back, it was a mistake. Despite being a housewife, Violet didn't do any housework, so I ended up taking on all the household responsibilities. When I brought food to Georgie, all I ever heard was, "This is terrible, too bland, or too tough." He couldn't walk on his own, but with assistance, he could move. Yet, he would deliberately soil himself and demand, "Change my diaper." The harassment toward me was relentless. Of course, neither Violet nor Bert ever helped with Georgie's care. The only support I received was from my daughter when she had time after school. If it weren't for her, I don't think I could have endured those painful years. 7 years into caring for Georgie, I returned home exhausted from shopping to find Bert and Violet in the living room, grinning maliciously. Whenever they wore those expressions, it meant they were up to something. Sighing internally, I braced myself for whatever scheme they had devised. Finally, "You're back. You're always slow at everything. That's why I'm going to throw you away," Bert sneered. "What? What do you mean?" I asked, stunned. "You're no longer needed. Get out of this house already." He laughed cruelly. "Exactly. Someone as useless as you should leave immediately." Violet chimed in, shoving divorce papers in my face. Bert's signature was already on the husband's line, so this was their plan. I showed no emotion as I looked at the divorce papers Violet held out. "Bert, these papers are already filled out. Am I to take this seriously?" "Of course. You know I'm not the type to joke about something like this," he replied smugly. "You'd better sign them and leave Bert. His new wife will take care of things from now on," Violet added. I took the papers, bowing my head slightly as I did. Seeing me accept them, Bert and Violet assumed I was too shocked to speak. They burst into triumphant laughter. Watching them, I allowed myself a small smile. The truth is, I had known about Bert's affair for weeks. How did I find out? Thanks to my daughter. One day, she came home from high school and said something shocking. "Mom, I know this might sound strange, but you should divorce Dad." I was dumbfounded. Hearing the word divorce from my teenage daughter was the last thing I expected. "Why would you say that? Did you see us fighting?" "No, it's because he is cheating," she said bluntly. "What?" "Yesterday, I saw him walking with a woman or the hotel district. I was heading to the shopping center nearby, so I don't know what happened after that." Recently, Bert had been working late more often and taking on extra weekend shifts, which had made me suspicious of an affair. So when I heard about it, a part of me wasn't surprised. Still, knowing that my daughter had witnessed Bert's infidelity firsthand left me deeply disgusted with him as a parent and a person. "Lily, thank you for telling me. I'll investigate further. Are you okay with us getting divorced?" "Okay. I've been wondering why you haven't done it already," she replied with surprising maturity. I realized she must have been holding back her feelings for my sake. I felt terrible for putting her in such a position. With Lily's words in mind, I used the savings I'd kept since before my marriage to hire a private investigator to gather evidence of Bert's affair. Bert must have thought I'd never find out, because collecting the proof was remarkably easy. To keep the evidence safe, I carried it in my bag at all times, knowing that leaving it at the in-laws' house would be too risky. At the same time, I began quietly moving my and Lily's belongings to my parents' home, preparing for the day we would leave. I worried that Bert or his parents might notice the dwindling items, but none of them paid attention, allowing me to proceed undetected. When Bert handed me the divorce papers, I excused myself by saying I need some time alone to process this, and walked into Lily's room. "Lily, get ready to leave. As soon as we're packed, we're out of here," I told her. That was quick. "Most of our stuff is already at Grandma and Grandpa's, so I'll be ready in no time," she replied with a smile. We shared a quiet laugh, and I went to my bedroom to gather the last of my things. Since we hadn't bought any large furniture after moving into the in-laws' house, everything fit into my car, which was a relief. When I walked out with my packed belongings, Lily was already waiting for me. Together, we headed to the living room where Bert and Violet were sitting. "Well, as you wanted, we're leaving this house. But before we go, take a look at this," I said, pulling the evidence of Bert's affair from my bag and spreading it on the table. At that moment, I felt a mix of satisfaction from knowing the divorce would be on Bert's fault and anger at everything I'd endured. "What is this?" Bert demanded, his face turning pale. "Pretty good shots, huh? The private investigator did a great job," I said smugly. "Don't be ridiculous. This is fake," he shouted, grabbing the evidence from the table and tearing it up. "Well, that's the end of the proof. You shouldn't have left it lying around," Violet said with a smirk, standing behind Bert. "Exactly," Bert chimed in, his arrogance returning. But I only smiled confidently. "Those were just copies. The originals are safely stored elsewhere, so destroying these won't help you," I said calmly. Yes, they were just copies. The originals had already been handed over to my lawyer and were securely stored in a safe location. When I told him this, he exploded with rage. "You've been sneaking around behind my back doing this. You're the worst." "Who's the worst here?" "Showing your daughter evidence of your infidelity. What kind of disgusting father lets his child witness something like that?" I retorted. "It was me who told Mom about your affair," Lily interjected. "I saw you walking with that woman toward the hotel district." Bert was speechless at her words. I glanced at Lily and saw an expressionless face. I had never seen her look like this before, and it sent a small shiver down my spine. I'll gladly finalize the divorce, but I'll be demanding compensation from both of you and child support from you, Bert. Please communicate through my lawyer from now on. With that, I left the in-laws' house. From there, I went straight to the municipal office and filed the divorce papers, making the separation official. My daughter and I stayed at my parents' house for 6 months while we worked to rebuild our lives. Lily was in her final year of high school, and I wanted her to focus on her studies without any distractions. I started working from home, which allowed me to earn a living while being there for her. One evening, after finishing work, I was relaxing in the living room when Lily came home, breaking the peaceful silence. "Mom." She stormed into the room, her footsteps heavy. "Lily, welcome home. Could you slow down a bit? You scared me." "Sorry, Mom, but this is serious. At school today." Before she could finish, the doorbell rang. I checked the screen and saw Bert standing outside. "What? He followed you here. What's going on?" I asked, startled. "When I was leaving school, he called out to me at the gate. When I turned around, there he was," Lily explained, her voice shaking. "And then, he kept yelling that he wanted to talk to you. I got scared and ran home," she said, her voice trembling. "Good call, sweetie. Staying with him would have been dangerous." As we spoke, Bert's voice came through the intercom. "Lily, I know you're in there. Let's talk. It's been so long since you've seen Dad. You must have missed me," he said. Clearly, Bert thought I wasn't home and that Lily was alone. I gestured for Lily to stay quiet and began speaking to him through the intercom. "Long time no see," I said coldly. "Rebecca, what are you doing there?" Bert exclaimed, clearly surprised. "This is my home too. Why wouldn't I be here? This is all your fault. You destroyed my family. You need to take responsibility for that." "My fault? What are you talking about?" I replied, unfazed. From the divorce proceedings, I had learned from my lawyer that Bert had married his mistress and moved in with his parents. "You and your mistress moved in with your parents, didn't you?" "What happened?" "She ran off after just a few months of living with us," Bert shouted, his frustration evident. "What?" "When we moved in on the day we got married, I asked her to help take care of Dad. She said she never agreed to that. Mom and I had to keep an eye on her while she helped. But one day, when Mom wasn't watching, she just ran off. You should have told her about the caregiving responsibilities before getting married. And if you had time to monitor her, why not use that time to help with the caregiving yourself? Your mistress leaving has nothing to do with us. And waiting for her daughter outside her school. Don't you realize that could be considered stalking? Coming to see my daughter is not stalking. And I only went to Lily's school because no one was at your parents' house. My parents had sold their house right after Lily and I moved out. They used the money to buy a camper van, and we're now traveling the country. So even if Bert went to my parents' old house, he'd only find a for sale sign. I even waited outside your workplace, but I couldn't catch you there," Bert continued. "I work from home now, so I don't go to the office anymore," I replied calmly. "That explains it. In that case, Lily's school was the only option. She's in her senior year, so it's not like she can just transfer schools." I had forgotten how calculating Bert could be in situations like this. I glanced at Lily, who was glaring at Bert with a look of disdain. She had resented him ever since the divorce, and now she seemed furious at being followed. However, leaving Bert unchecked could lead to more disruptions, and even if I sent him away this time, there was a high chance he would come back, and if he decided to show up at Lily's school again, that could negatively affect her college entrance exams. Since he was clearly determined to talk to me, I decided to settle this matter once and for all. Fine, but discussing this here will disturb the neighbors. There's a cafe a few minutes down the road to the right. Wait for me there. Now you're talking sense. You've really changed since the old days. Fine, I'll wait at the cafe, but don't even think about running. If you do, I'll head straight back to Lily's school. I'm not running away. Now go, I snapped. Bert, clearly pleased with himself, headed off toward the cafe. Mom, are you sure about this? Lily asked, her concern evident. Yes, I'll be fine. I chose the cafe because it's public and safe. With so many people around, he wouldn't dare try anything. Then I'm coming with you. I don't want you to face him alone. I appreciate that, sweetheart, but I'll handle this. Actually, I have a special task for you, I said with a reassuring smile. A task? I was planning to make curry tonight. Could you take care of it instead? But, after dealing with your dad, I'll probably be exhausted. Coming home to a warm curry made by you will give me the strength I need. Mom, you're impossible. Fine, I'll make it. But be careful, okay? Thank you, Lily. I'm looking forward to it. With that, I left for the cafe. It was just before dinner time, so the place was busy, with plenty of people around. That reassured me I felt safe. As I walked in, I spotted Bert, sitting in the far corner by the window. He must have chosen to sit as far away as possible, but no matter where he sat, anyone nearby could probably hear our conversation. I walked toward Bert's table. Sorry to keep you waiting. Didn't you bring Lily with you? Why on earth would I bring her? Let's get straight to the point. I ordered a coffee and turned to face Bert. So what do you want to talk about? At first, Bert started speaking in a low voice, but his words were completely inaudible. I can't hear you. Speak up, Rebecca, please. Return the compensation money and child support I gave you. I beg you. My mind filled with question marks. What on earth was he even talking about? The compensation was for his infidelity, and the child support was for Lily's future. Are you insane? The compensation was an apology for your affair, wasn't it? And child support is meant for Lily's education. What's this about you giving it to me? Why are you even saying this? Don't you get it? If we get back together, there's no need for compensation or child support. How clueless could he be? Why would he think I'd want to get back together with him? I'd rather never see him again. My silence seemed to encourage him, and he mistook it for hesitation, rambling on with enthusiasm. You see, after my second wife left, I realized what an amazing woman you were. You quit your job to take care of Dad, handled all the housework, and raised Lily all on your own. Now Mom is the one taking care of Dad, but she's injured her back, and she can't manage it anymore. Of course, I'm working to support everyone, but my coworkers found out about the affair. And now, I can't manage life without you. Please, come back. I won't ask for much. Lily will be off to college next year anyway, so your burden will be lighter. Lily's dream college was far away, and she'd likely move out to live on her own. Yes, Lily might move out for college, but from what you're saying, you expect me to handle caregiving and housework just like before. Let me remind you, I'm now working full-time and have a significant position at my company. I can't just quit on a whim, and I'm not getting back together with you. Caregiving and housework are a wife's duties. A man works outside and earns money. That's the secret to a harmonious family. We've been together for so long. We can make it work again. He reached across the table, trying to grab my hand. I quickly pulled it away. It was clear he intended to dump all the caregiving onto me again. By the way, he was still just an ordinary employee at his job, while I now earned more with my new role. After leaving my job to care for you, Father, I was lucky enough to be rehired as a full-time employee. Despite the gap in my career, I've since been promoted and now earn a higher salary. How about you? Still in the same position, I assume. How dare you say that to your husband? I've never quit my job, neither have I, and I'm loving my work right now. That's why we're fundamentally incompatible. Oh, and I know how useless you are at your job. Bert's face flushed as he looked down. Did I go too far? Maybe, but I needed to make it crystal clear for him to back off. Several minutes of awkward silence passed. Bert didn't say a word. Even my coffee had gone cold. I downed it in one gulp and stood up. Is that all? If so, I'll be leaving now. Bye. Wait, are you seriously rejecting me for good? I've been saying that all along, haven't I? Then, let me have Lily. If she comes with me, the child support will go to me, right? Are you nuts? Lily is 18. She's old enough to make her own decisions. And even if you try to push her, she'll never want anything to do with you. That's fine. Just let me talk to her directly. Bert shouted, suddenly standing up. The families nearby turned to stare at him. Fine, just stop making a scene, I hissed. Really? Call her here now. So I called Lily and asked her to come to the cafe. 15 minutes later, she arrived. Mom, sorry to keep you waiting. You're not late at all. I'm sorry for calling you out so suddenly. It's because of him, right? She glared at Bert as she spoke. I saw you at school earlier. You've grown so much. That's my girl, Bert said with a forced smile. Let's skip the theatrics. What do you want? Make it quick, I'm in the middle of cooking dinner. She sat down beside me. I glanced at her anxiously, but she gave me a reassuring smile. Lily, as I already told your mom, I want you to come live with me, Bert said. No. What? Don't answer so quickly. Is that all? If so, I'm leaving now. Mom, hurry back soon, okay? I'm making my special curry tonight, she said as she stood and walked briskly toward the exit. Bert sat silently, his head down, seemingly crushed by her response. Do you get it now? This is the result of how you neglected your daughter all these years, I said. I placed some cash on the table to cover my coffee and stood up. If he had cared for his daughter when she was younger, if he had prioritized me over his parents, maybe things could have been different. Perhaps we might not have ended up divorced. As I walked home from the cafe, memories of my marriage to Bert flooded back. If he had always been on my side, if he had cherished our daughter together with me. But it was all in the past. I shook off those thoughts as I opened the front door. Welcome home. The curry's just finished. Perfect timing, huh? Lily greeted me cheerfully. I'm back. It smells amazing. I could smell it from outside. Let's eat before it gets cold. We sat down to enjoy the curry Lily had made. She used the same roux I always did, but somehow it tasted far better than mine. I told her how much I appreciated her. Since that day, Bert hadn't shown up unannounced, nor had he tried to wait for us at work or school. I had worried that his stalking might affect Lily's mental health, but she seemed fine and was accepted into her first-choice university. She plans to live on her own when she starts college. Although she invited me to move with her, my work keeps me from relocating. After living together for 18 years, the thought of separating from her fills me with sadness. But she reassured me, saying, even though I'm going to college, it's not that far away. I'll come home for family gatherings and Christmas. I could even come back every weekend if you want. I later heard rumors about Bert's current life. Violet's back pain had worsened, leaving her unable to care for Georgie. Now Bert has to support both of them while holding down a job. without me as a scapegoat. I wonder if Georgie has turned his verbal abuse toward Bert, but that's none of my concern at all. He apparently tried to place his parents in a facility, but Georgie refused, insisting on staying in the house where he was born and raised. I once saw him at a shopping center, and I barely recognized him. He looked utterly worn out, a shadow of the man he was during our marriage. After our divorce, with his mistress gone, and the burden of caregiving falling on him, it's unlikely he'll find another partner anytime soon. He had paid the compensation and child support in a lump sum, which likely left him in debt. He can't afford to quit his job. As for me, I've let go of any desire to remarry. Since the divorce, I've realized I'm fine being on my own. Lily keeps encouraging me to meet someone new, but for now, my happiness comes from seeing her thrive. Today is her high school graduation. It's the last time I'll see her in her school uniform. While I'll miss her dearly, I plan to cherish the remaining days we have together before she moves out.
Leave the money and get out quickly. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? As I felt lost, Thomas grinned and said, "Well, that went as planned." Mission accomplished. Well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished. At that moment, I had no idea of the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company, while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs, no change-ups. But I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own. Now, Thomas, Dad, and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles the dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother Jason. Dad is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad. And Dad, being soft, lends him the money. Dad, lending money is fine, but has he ever paid you back? Violet, when you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that. But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky? When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So, I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. This was the first time I had ever heard about my dad's younger days. So, that's why I want to support Jason's dreams. But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day? Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way is part of the story. Wow, you sound like a poet. Makes sense since you wanted to be a novelist. Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise. I'm not praising you. Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him. But it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home. "Let me introduce you. This is Charlotte." From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. "Hi, I'm Charlotte." "I'm Violet, the sister." "Nice to meet you." Charlotte is 5 years younger than me, but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jiu-jitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't bragworthy like headbutting a disrespectful boss. Two kinds of stories I really can't stand: bragging about bad behavior in the past, and bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turnoff. One day, Jason came to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up. "Jason, you're working, right? Why don't you have any money?" I got into an argument with the plant manager just because I forgot to put away a cart. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chin. Charlotte seemed pleased, asking, "Total KO?" I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would. Every workplace has people you won't get along with. But you know, even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center. So, yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee. I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in. "You're siding with a boss who harasses people?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Oh, so you're lecturing me?" "You better be ready for this." "Ready? Want to take this outside? Or here's fine, too." I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager? Feeling threatened, I walked away. I couldn't believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped it if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. The era of living to 100. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said, "Violet, actually, Lawrence." "What?" "Never mind." "What do you mean, never mind? Just tell me." "Later." Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me. "Did Lawrence leave a will?" "A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance." "You're already talking about inheritance? I guess you're not even sad. How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me." When I raised my voice, Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback, but didn't want to apologize. "Should we call the police?" "What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock." "You're the one who's wrong, Violet." "Enough! Don't yell. What are we going to do about the inheritance?" I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason. "Jason, aren't you sad that Dad passed away?" That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you. What did you just say? The atmosphere was tense until Thomas arrived. What's going on here? Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right. Those words crossed the line. I'll pass that message right along to Jason. Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier. Decision? Jason dropped a bombshell. I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine. Are you out of your mind? I'm perfectly sane, Jason said, stone-faced. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up. Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress. Fine. We sat down at the table to hash it out. The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's. Violet, I want you to give up your claim. That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between two households, there won't be much left. There's only two of Dad's children, me and Jason. So it should be divided between us. But Jason scowled. Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money. Why don't you get a job, Jason? Let me finish. Living in this house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know? The best way to honor him is to pack Carnegie Hall. You can't even pack the local park. What if I do fill Carnegie Hall? Will you put your money where your mouth is? What are you talking about? I seriously considered calling the police. Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in? I cannot. Then Thomas calmly asked Jason. So you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim? Yes. And you're okay with that, Jason? What are you talking about? Of course it's not okay. At that point, Charlotte glared at me. Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time. Such words should not be tolerated. When I glared at her, Charlotte glared back with an angry face. Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hag. Take that back. I won't tolerate insults. Thomas, wasn't it? You should have set her straight. What a useless couple you are. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet. If you weren't as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago. For a moment, Charlotte looked dumbfounded, but then turned to Jason. Did your sister just call me a hippo? Violet, apologize while you still can. I'll apologize when Charlotte does. Enough, both of you. Violet, calm down. Fine. Let's proceed with the disinheritance, Violet. I looked at Thomas with wide eyes, but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas. So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited? I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying. What an infuriating couple. A wife who acts younger than she is, and a husband who thinks he's smart but is actually dumb. Leave the money and move out already. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family, despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this. We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time. If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside. Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me. Unable to contain my anger, I stepped outside. I wonder if Dad is also at fault. Thomas smiled at my confusion. It worked. Our plan was a success. What? These moments make me thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are still substantial monthly expenses: rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this kind of effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively, and when he's out of money, he turns to Dad. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired. I always tell my kids how important it is to save, so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo. Once we had finished unpacking, Thomas said, "Let's consult a lawyer first." A lawyer? To initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up? That's when Thomas finally told me what he had almost mentioned before. While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt. What? Because of Jason? Yes. That made them even more unforgivable. Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life. You're not entirely right, but you're close. Huh? Thomas told me something even more shocking. Charlotte had yelled loudly from behind Dad and pushed him with both hands. It wasn't just a one-time prank, it had happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far. In other words, Lawrence has much more debt than assets. You get what I'm saying? Yes, now I get it. Inheritors receive not just assets, but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance. Let's ask the lawyer. That's the best course. We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I thought they might show up, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo. Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Set you up? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold. I calmly took out my mobile phone. Hello, is this the police? What are you doing? Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off. Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this? Then Thomas stepped in. Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So, you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off. Jason was at a loss for words when Charlotte interjected. Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me. Or should we lay it all out for a third party? I'll share every detail of what happened. Jason, are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life? Unable to respond, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte was defiant. If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent. Charlotte smirked, glanced back, and looked at Thomas again. Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerce me? Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation. Idiot. Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing. Seeing Charlotte's tirade, Thomas turned to Jason. Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second. Excuse me. Who are you telling to shut up? Feeling something dangerous in Charlotte's menacing glare, I said. If you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's go back for now. As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. I could hear their arguing voices, but I was more concerned about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute. A few seconds later, I heard Jason's screams from down the hall, but I pretended not to know him. Immediately after that, I heard what sounded like a dying scream, but it had nothing to do with me. Jason and Charlotte had insulted us, so obviously they'd severed ties with our family. So whether they divorce or Charlotte gets arrested for assault, it has nothing to do with me. A few days later, I got a call from Jason. Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? Who is this? Don't be like that. We're siblings, right? I couldn't help but feel it was too late. Turns out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. This was like something straight out of a comic book. Ever heard the term "you reap what you sow"? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills. That's unfortunate. No matter how coldly I brushed him off, Jason kept begging. Please, for the love of God, help me. I'm not God. Is Thomas there? Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family. My words seemed to hit hard, and Jason was speechless. Switching the call. Thomas took over. After a brief chat, he hung up. Let's go to the hospital. Don't give him a cent. I know. Thomas and I went to the hospital, but not to visit. It's better to say it face to face. Jason pleaded in a polite tone. Please help me. Debt collectors have come to the first floor of the hospital, the nurse told me. I'm scared to death. But Thomas looked stern. After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties. That's not what I meant. Well, if we're not cutting ties, then why disinherit? Disinheritance means cutting family ties. Jason looked down and spoke softly. I apologize for what I've done. But I need your help. I have no one else to turn to. What about Charlotte? We're divorced. A family falling apart, then. She's at the police station for assault. It felt unreal. You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me. Jason looked troubled. People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said. But those on the receiving end don't forget. I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I've heard it from Charlotte as well. The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband. What does that even mean? Explain it to me. Thomas presses on logically. What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman? Those are not words you say to a woman. Jason seems to have forgotten not just his own comments, but also those made by Charlotte. Yelling like a little puppy, that's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young wannabe, or a 50-year-old hag. Don't repeat it. Sorry. Thomas doesn't let up. You said it to me as well. When I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance, you told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now. Jason lowers his head on the bed, looking like he's about to cry. I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me? No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me. Thomas glares at the trembling Jason. Explain it. What? Jason shakes and his eyes go wide with a terrified look. If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now. Let's just cut ties completely. You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly. Thomas looks down at the dejected Jason, then turns to me. Shall we go? Yes. After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy. But he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face. I saw your scary side today. There's nothing like that. Be kind to me, okay? Of course. The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days, basking in the warmth of spring sunlight.